Welcome to my discussion video about the quilt patterns mentioned in the book Alias Grace. I'm your beautiful and intelligent host, Bart. This book is set in the 17th century when quilts were often used as bed covers. Grace Marks describes them as a symbol of female sexuality, but also as a warning flag. She says this to Dr. Jordan. "They make the bed the most noticeable thing in the room. You may think a bed a peaceful thing, sir, and to you it may mean rest and comfort and a good night's sleep. But it isn't so for everyone, and there are many dangerous things that take place in a bed." Grace sees sex as a death contract. Sex leads to childbirth, and childbirth was very dangerous in this time. There were also no safe ways of getting an abortion, which is shown in the books. There are a variety of quilts named in this book, and they also serve as some of the chapters' titles. This gives the story structure, obviously, but also shows the way Grace and Dr. Jordan look for the deeper meaning in everything. I will be explaining the meaning of 4 of these quilts and how they relate to the story. First up is Broken Dishes. This is also the title of Chapter 5 in Alias Grace. In this chapter, Grace tells Dr. Jordan about her journey to Canada, specifically the boat trip she had to endure to get there. The living circumstances in this boat were horrible, and it took 8 weeks to arrive at her destination. During this time, Grace's mother fell ill and passed away due to this sickness. The Broken Dishes quilt design features a lot of jagged triangles, which represent the chaos and harshness of Grace's life during this time. The pattern also mimics the fragmented nature of Grace's life, both in her memory and the events surrounding her constant relocations. Next up is the quilt pattern, The Secret Drawer. This quilt is the title of Chapter 6. In this chapter, Grace moves to Mrs. Alderman Parkinson's house to work as a servant. She meets a lovely woman called Mary Whitney and becomes very good friends with her. But, unfortunately, after getting an abortion, Mary passes away, and some strange things happen with Grace. The pattern doesn't symbolize anything visually, but its name refers to hidden sections of the world. One of these hidden sections is Grace's mind. It's a mystery if Grace has become the embodiment for not just her own personality, but also Mary's. Dr. Jordan takes it upon himself to find out what the real story behind Thomas Kinnear's murder is, but since Grace is an unreliable narrator and can't be fully trusted with what she says, only she can open the secret drawer of her memory and view the contents. The next quilt pattern is Lady of the Lake. This is the title of Chapter 10 in the book. Chapter 10 talks about the time Grace was on the run for Thomas Kinnear's murder along with James McDermott. She was very scared of him, and she didn't know what to do. She followed his orders as they traveled to the United States. The quilt pattern itself looks like a pinwheel, and Grace was always confused about why this pattern was called Lady of the Lake, until she stays at an inn in Niagara near the Niagara Falls. Here, she sees a rowboat that goes by the name the Lady of the Lake, and she realizes that the pinwheels symbolize the stroking movements of the oars. This reminds her that every problem has an answer eventually if you look into it. The Tree of Life is the final quilt pattern that we are discussing in this video. This pattern is the title of Chapter 15. This is the last chapter of the book, where Grace is finally able to leave Kingston Penitentiary and she marries Jamie Walsh, who she met at her time in the Kinnear house. She mentions in the book that this is one of the 3 patterns that a married woman has to have made. Grace makes her own Tree of Life quilt, in which she embroiders a piece of her penitentiary rags, Nancy's dress, and a piece of blood-soaked cloth from Mary's nightgown. The Tree of Life is often mentioned in the story, and it symbolizes the thin line between good and evil, and also Grace's fall from, grace. The use of these clothing pieces shows that these women are connected to each other. Grace says it's so they can all be together. Alias Grace is such an intricate story, with so much more symbolism hidden in the pages of this masterpiece. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you've been enlightened by my insight. Good night, and sleep tight.